Good. I'm just sitting in the Amex Lounge in Dallas right now, headed to Montana to go e-biking in Glacier National Park.
Me and my wife were the first ones out of that. We were trying to go, and right about the time we booked it, it was like, oh, the last spot was just taken. So, right, be
Next
sitting next
time.
to you doing this.
Next time. That's okay.
Yeah.
I do have a spot here. Well,
Yeah.
everybody, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming to hang out, and hopefully we're live right now on Facebook and the YouTubes and all the things. And today we are talking with Lance Wolf about short-term rental gold on the Space and Treasure Coast. Lance, what is the Space and Treasure Coast? And then tell us a little bit about you too.
So the Space and Treasure Coast are east side of Florida. I'm in a very large market between Cocoa Beach all the way down to Jupiter. Very, very, very different markets throughout. If I start in the south and go Jupiter, it's more the Lux, high entrance level, but also high ADRs. And then you just hit for 100 miles, just cute coastal towns, quiet, beachy, fishing village. We're the closest area in the entire nation to the Gulf Stream. So it's fishing capital of the world here. And then once you hit Melbourne to Cocoa, it turns more into the surfer beach vibe. So whatever you want, I got. Unless you're looking for mountains, which I don't have.
I think the largest hill in Florida is in Dade City, kind of close to where I'm originally from. And yeah,
And
it's easy to run to the top of that one.
was it a landfill?
Uh, it's probably something like that. Yeah. What makes so you've got obviously Space Coast and you've got a lot happening there, and it looks like a lot happening there to the future as well. And Treasure Coast, what makes it different from other parts of Florida like Miami, Orlando, Tampa, Panama City Beach, all that?
Well, a lot of it is just entry price point. It should be called the Quiet Coast. I mean, there's tons of tourism here, but we get a lot of people coming up from those cities that you just mentioned just to get away.
Yeah.
To get to the beach where you can actually park, and not have to pay to park and go find a spot in the sand and enjoy it. Whereas, in a Space Coast, like, you mentioned, there's tons of things to do up there. There's almost a rocket launch every week. I just posted one of those, but, it's incredible. And, we're looking at the launches in 5 minutes, and I'm like looking at my escape route, like, how do I get out of here? And it's red everywhere. Every street is red. You're not going anywhere. And it's like, all right, well, let's hang out here for a while because we're not going anywhere.
That's just people stopping in the middle of town to just watch. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and since there is a launch almost every week, well, right now they're averaging more than every week because there's been 35 launches this year so far. So that's like
Wow.
almost every 6 days. So if you come and stay for a week up here, you're most likely going to see one. Or, if there is a delay, it goes off tomorrow. Because they're just going to space. They're not trying to line up the moon or anything like that. So bad weather, you go for 3 days to see a launch and do Kennedy Space Center, or even Disney is only an hour away. You're highly likelihood of getting to see one, and it's amazing experience. Everyone's oohing and on. You can hear it fluttering in the thing, and then 2 minutes later, the sonic boom hits you and about knocks the windows out of your house. So it's quite an experience, and it's driving so much tourism up there at the moment for sure.
And you're going to have the SpaceX IPO, I was reading, is coming out soon. And that's only going to increase things, right? I mean, that's going to
Yeah.
increase the visibility and the tourism surrounding this. There is no way that space travel is going to become less interesting to people in the future, I don't think.
Yeah, well, I live about an hour south of that, and I still get the alerts and go out to my back porch and watch them go, even though it's this big and you just see it. But when you're up there, it's such a cool experience because down here I live in the Treasure Coast. The rocket's gone and it's been gone for 10 minutes, and then my house goes boom, boom. Then you finally hit that. But when you're up there, you feel it and it hits you when you still see the rocket. So it's really cool. And
It's
then with
amazing.
SpaceX, you see it take off, and then all of a sudden you see the booster come back and land. So it's wild,
I would think that's
So
almost more exciting than watching it take off, to be honest. I think the tech to like actually make it land is crazy.
yeah, yeah. I was recording the video of it landing. As soon as it kind of went out of sight, I stopped recording, and my wife goes, "You're gonna miss the boom," and I'm like, "Oh, I totally missed the sound."
Um, the big area there, kind of between Space and Treasure Coast. What's driving tourism in the markets? And when we talk Space Coast to Treasure Coast, what are the cities that are actually kind of involved in maybe bordering that area? Because I've heard you say that this is the least known area of Florida, right? Especially in terms of tourism. Right now, it's the least known area of Florida, but I can't think of any area in Florida that was least known that then became amazing. I'll take St. Pete, for instance. Everybody nowadays loves St. Pete. It's beautiful, it's got a great downtown, but I grew up in that area, and St. Pete used to be real dangerous. It was not interesting or exciting. It was scary. It was like, don't be down there after dark. And now it's really beautiful, and lots of people love it. So I think I would not count out any area in Florida. In
Nope.
fact, I would even say that potentially this is one of the few left emerging markets in the U.S., especially when it comes to short-term rentals. So, what's going to drive that in the future? Tourism, the cities involved. Give me the whole lowdown there.
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned Space Coast is space. Kennedy, proximity to Orlando. Really, with as other areas get bombarded with either residents or short-term rentals and super properties everywhere, that is super lacking in the Treasure Coast. So I've known a couple of people who bought a house here, for 350, put 40 maybe into it, no pool, and they're hitting 80 plus. It's just because there's a bunch of homes, but no
Yep.
one's no one's doing the savvy thing.
Yeah.
There's
I
not
love
many.
that. The savvy thing.
Hey, trademark right here. Um, and so no one's doing that. Someone coming in here and putting full design in, doing the cool backyards, adding all these amenities. You're just instantly super property. And before I come on with Savvy, me and you were looking at the Treasure Coast here, and you were like, "This looks like Asheville before I got here."
Yeah.
Just lots of tourism, but you don't hear about it because it's the families coming in. They're driving 2 hours north from Miami to be able to go to a nice restaurant, not have to wait or have 6 month reservation. They can go straight to the beach and park. I mean, it was Memorial Day yesterday, and I was up in Cocoa Beach, and their beaches were, I mean, busy but not full. And it's like it's Memorial. It's like the busiest time of the year, and I could still go to the beach, and park and go to the beach, but also push the properties that I could just walk and not have to worry about parking at all.
Yeah.
And
That's
in that
amazing.
area, you can get there. You can pretty much, and most of the land up in the Space Coast, it's narrow island, so you can pretty much walk to the beach almost any single family home up there.
And I think people are really going to enjoy that, right? Like the more and more that place, like try going to Clearwater Beach anymore. It takes forever to get there. Parking is a mile away. It's like $40. You got to haul all your stuff there. So difficult. And we're seeing the same thing kind of happen along that 30A and Panama City Beach corridor. It's like that for sure, pretty much everywhere you go in Miami and South Florida. Um, so I think that this area is really, really interesting, and that's why I'm calling it one of the very few emerging markets left in the U.S. And I think that if you haven't looked at this market for short-term rentals yet, it's definitely worth a look, because I think there's a lot of future upside here. Bill Faith always says, like, go to the markets that nobody's talking about, and yes, here we are talking about it, but for one of the very first times. And so, if you want to be one of those early adopters and go do the savvy thing in this area, I think it's a really good time to check it out. What sort of unique attractions, events, and what's the seasonality like there?
Really, the biggest lull down here is like September, and that's because it's the heart of hurricane season. And not to say people don't come down here. It's just, yeah, they'd rather come, maybe in August or wait a little bit, long. And then a lot of the coast here, it's still the middle of winter. You're still going to the beach because it's warm enough. Um, Drivers down south here, which is my diverse market, like I said, this is families, generational, grandparents come from New England, their kids from Michigan come, and then so and so from the other side of the coast, their kids come. And it's just a quiet getaway. They want to reset. They don't want to have to worry about where to go. They go eat at 3 o'clock so I can get in.
Mhm.
And those are the biggest drivers here. Obviously, there's tons of fishing tournaments here, lots of museums. It's the quaint part, So getting the home where you can walk to downtown, where most of the downtowns like Stewart, Jensen Beach, Vero, Fort Pierce, they don't have any like commercialized restaurants and stores. It's all local.
Mm.
All the local restaurants, you're not going to downtown and eating it like a Texas Roadhouse. It's a local owned place, which is a great vibe, and people love that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
goes north in the Space Coast. There's your tourism. There's Ron John and the pier and Kennedy Space Center and the rocket launches. More traditional tourism up there. But it's kind of lost down here because there's still. I mean, there's like 4.5 million people that visit the Space Coast. And
Mhm.
most people know where the Space Coast is, and there's like 2.5 million that come to the Treasure Coast.
Yeah.
But most investors I talk to, even from us, it's like, okay, where's the Treasure Coast? And
Yeah.
and just like you said, it's people talking about what they don't know or never heard of, or where people get in early and can really do well quickly.
Yeah. What sort of people come? Is it families, groups, large groups, small groups? What is it?
Families, families for
Okay.
sure.
Got
Yeah,
it. Where do you,
not So I was gonna say, like up further north, you might get a little more of the bachelor groups or the bachelorette groups. Down here in the Treasure Coast, yeah, no, it's generational families coming to hang out.
got it. Very cool. What do you think is the biggest opportunity there right now?
Um, for the Space Coast, I would say the biggest return would be canal front. You can get on the canal with a boat lift and dock for $1 million, 1.3. But you're the best of both worlds right there because they generally face the rocket launches in the front, and then the back is the sunset because like over the Indian River Lagoon.
Hmm.
Um, Further down south, the island gets super skinny, so you're probably oceanfront, and then the numbers don't really work out because it's a $4 million house, and so then you jump over to the mainland, just walking distance to downtowns.
Hmm.
Those do really well for. I mean, I've seen 350K entry, and then but needs some reno, and then up to 600 or so. That's something really well done, but still, the numbers make really good sense. And when there's nothing available on the beach that you can afford, everyone comes here, and it's just a hop, skip, and a jump because every single one of these little towns is connected to a causeway that gets you over to the beaches. So
Yeah.
you're not here next to downtown and you got to drive 25, 30 minutes to get to the beach. It's 4 minutes over the causeway and you're there.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, it's a really interesting market. It looks like, so I'm kind of looking at, at the Port St. Lucie market. That's like a good overall market, right? That kind of encompasses like Stewart and Jensen Beach and all of that. The numbers look really interesting. It looks like annual revenues up 4.3% year over year. Average daily rates are up almost 5% year over year. And total active listings are only at 0.7% year over year. So less than, if there's 3,000 listings in that market, less than what, 30 new listings in the market. Like that's pretty good for a market that's annual revenue and average daily rates are going up almost 5% year over year.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the Treasure Coast, right?
Yeah, and so Port St. Lucie's more of like super residential. It's a lot of transplants or travelers that like work in West Palm Beach but can't afford West Palm Beach, so they come here. But there's like the Mets Stadium there. They're building a soccer stadium, so there is opportunity there, but there's a ton of short-term rentals in Port St. Lucie um, that do average, but again,
Hmm.
no specialty. It's a good location with a bed,
Yeah.
to where you could come in and do a lot to that. But I generally focus more closer to the water. They tend to do a lot better.
Yeah.
And there's more to do. You got beach, you got the town, you got everything right there. And Port St. Lucie is more of like more of a city,
Hmm.
So people try to
Okay.
get away.
Yeah. Got it. What do purchase prices look like? We've talked about it a little bit in the area, but give us the breakdown between the Space Coast and the Treasure Coast.
Yeah, mainland and the Treasure Coast, you can enter at probably 350. That they just need a little love. Up to 700. It's really well done, big rooms or lots of rooms, I should say, and pool and there just some design stuff done there. Um, on the river in the Space Coast, probably enter at 1 million. There are some I've seen that are 800s, but they're 1962 home. They need completely redone, which great. There's a lot of value add up there for someone willing to come in and do all that. So there's an
Hmm.
opportunity there. You get there's a home trying to go under contract now that they bought for $1 million a year ago or 15 months ago, and they just added a pool and a new seawall and a boat dock, and now it's 1.35.
Wow.
So you could get the 895 waterfront home, put 200 into it, and then now you're sitting at 1.3, 1.4, or keep it a rental that's going to do 200K plus a year.
So there's
And
definitely some good opportunity there for sure, especially for people that want to do some value add potential.
oh, sure, sure. And then if you just jump, not on the river, there's probably 6 properties on my end in the Cocoa Beach area that are 600 to 800. Walking distance to the beach. Minuteman Causeway's right there to get over to off the island. Great spot.
How do the numbers compare to more saturated Florida markets?
Um, for the price entry point, I think they're over. And then it's we talk about no one's doing the super properties here. It's hard to say. I don't have the comps. It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
just
what's
like
the
when we
price per
started in
unit?
Asheville, we were kind of, it was like the wild, wild west. We didn't know what we were doing. I was
Yeah,
mad at Ashita for spending so much money all the time. And it turned out really good.
yeah. I've said it to a couple clients. It's like, well, this one's doing 200, and look at it. If you do what you're talking about doing, you're gonna make more than that. It might be 250, it might be 320. I don't know. Come here and let's make this comp. You be the comp. Because the sky's the limit when no one's doing stuff like that.
Yeah, totally makes sense. What sort of like occupancy and booking trends are you seeing between the Space Coast and the Treasure Coast right now?
Um, about 70% occupancy rate. It dips down to probably 60% in September. And then, end of May or so, it dips probably close to that a little bit when school starts again.
Okay.
Um, Cocoa Beach area is a little higher than that, probably 75 to 78% or so occupancy rate up there.
Are people booking a long time in advance, or what does that look like?
It depends on the time of year. Winter gets booked up real or earlier than the summer does. And that's because there's tons of snowbirds that come down here to escape the cold winter. So they book during winter when they're up there freezing, going, I'm not doing this again. Next year we're going to Florida. Let's see what we can get. So,
Guilty. I did the same thing, so guilty. Maybe not for that area, but I did the same thing.
yeah, for sure.
Um, what types of properties are best? Is it the larger ones, the smaller ones? Purchase price to revenue. What does that look like?
It depends on the market, and it depends on I'll say your risk tolerance, because there's some places in, well, Cocoa Beach is 8-person max. It could be a 25 bedroom house and it's 8. Now, do they enforce that? No, you know, but here's what it is. It's so funny. You look at the top listings in Coco, and it's like 8 guests, 16 beds. You're like, wait, what? But listing it as 8, they're making 200 to 250, a year doing it that way. So, you know, go for it. And then once you hit the Treasure Coast, 4 to 5 bedrooms are the most popular, and mainly because they're the least. There's tons of 3-2s everywhere around here. So, just jumping up to 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom are going to get you the best returns.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Um, what specific like areas, or are there like any secret little pockets that you know of that investors should be looking at? I'm
Yeah,
sure you do. You don't
yeah.
have to reveal all the secrets here.
Well, again, it's like, kind of back to the regulations. There's certain areas like up in Melbourne where, the county city line is drawn really weird to where, you can have it a short-term rental in the city, but the city trickles over to the island in these two small pockets. So on the island, and they're allowed, but you go one street north of where I know of a place to go, and you can't do it there. So per regulations and HOAs, yes, it's definitely when you want someone like me that knows these little pockets that can safely get you in
Yeah,
without any issues.
makes sense. What's the first step for somebody they just want to, what is this market? What's it like? Why would I buy here? Why should I buy here? They're trying to either diversify their portfolio or maybe even buy their first short-term rental. What is the good first step?
Like what type of property?
I think just a good first step, just for somebody that's getting started there.
Yeah, I mean, just give me a call.
That's the
We'll
easy answer.
yeah, the easy button. Give me a call and we'll talk about the market. Like I said, do you want a lifestyle asset? Let's go to Jupiter. You want a quiet getaway that you're going to use to escape the craziness of city? Let's come to the Treasure Coast. You like cool rockets and explosions? Let's go to Coco.
Maybe not explosions, hopefully.
Well,
unless they're unless they're testing the Starship, but they don't do the Starship there, right? That's in a different area.
Yeah,
That's in Texas, right?
that's in Texas.
Okay, cool. I don't know a lot about it. I just see the reels on Facebook and hope that nothing's going to actually explode.
Yeah, well, it's funny when it does explode, all the SpaceX people cheer, because they pushed it to the limit and they knew it was going to explode, and then it explodes, and they're like, "Yay!" It's funny to see.
And then they're going to IPO, and every time one explodes, you're going to think like, "There's my share price. There's my share price."
Time to buy.
Yeah, maybe that's true. Buy the dip. What are some common mistakes that people are making in the Space Coast and the Treasure Coast?
Um, you know, Buying in HOAs, I think, is a big one. I have pretty. I don't think I have a single area on my whole look box that is an HOA.
Hmm.
And even though they do allow them, some of them do. It is so easy down here in Florida for them to just go, nope, no more. 30-day minimum. And and you just purchased into this place, and now your whole investment strategy is ruined because
Yeah.
that just went away. So condos, there's a few condos that are allowed. Most of those are up in the Space Coast. Down here it's 30-day minimum on most all of them. So a big mistake here would be buying not in the know and getting into one of these places that after closing you find out that you can't do that here.
Yeah, that's why you got to work with somebody like you.
Yeah, yeah, or buying just to launch it and not doing anything to it, not a speck of design, no amenities. It's just, I need to plant some money here. It's like, okay, well, in so many of these markets where you have to design it like crazy to compete, now you've done nothing to compete with the average.
Yeah.
Like you look at
And
Airbnb and it's like 3 really good top performing properties, and then it goes from 200K to 60 like that, and you're just yeah, well, that's exactly why. But
yeah,
there's still
that's
books at
opportunity.
the time. Yeah, there's still booked because if someone's coming here, and the good ones are booked. They're still coming here. So
And I
they
think,
buy the average.
yeah, I think that's the key to a great short-term rental realtor is that ultimately what we do is not just help you find a good property, but like the rockets on the Space Coast, we give you a launch plan. We're telling you from A to Z, not only, hey, is this a good property, but why is it? And what do you need to do with it to make it a great property and make sure that it doesn't explode into pieces like the Starship always does? Because for sure, there will be people cheering for your demise, just as SpaceX does for the Starship every time it blows up. And that's what our goal is to prevent at Savvy, right? Is like, here is an entire launch plan. And it's not just, here's a national launch plan. Like, here is from somebody that's boots on the ground, that lives here, that watches this all the time, that looks at the data every day and sees it. When you look at AirDNA, you can see a snapshot of what exists right now, but you can't see what did that look like yesterday and what did it look like the day before that. And you're not following those trends. And I think that's the biggest problem or hole that people fall into is they're not watching the trends. They're not looking at AirDNA for years and years on end and understanding the market at a fundamental level. There's nothing in the world that can replace that. And that's what we do at Savvy. And that's what I think is the coolest thing about us.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
what should investors watch out for in the market?
Um, Watch out for, I mean, regulations. We've already talked about. Um, the state of Florida, they unless it's in an HOA, they can't change regulations. They passed a law in 2011 that says they can't limit night stays or anything like that. So, you could watch out for them trying to do it, or getting in an HOA like we talked about, or, between HOAs, or, oh, we're thinking about forming an HOA, it's like, warning, time to look elsewhere. And I like to not get in city limits either, is, a kind of thing that I try to look for, or city proper, just because they're easier at, and not to say that they could outlaw them, because they can't, but
Mhm.
they can start. Okay, permit process just become a
Yep.
nightmare with three
Make your
times
life
the call
difficult.
it was last year. You can't park on the street. It's, if someone's in your house for more than 15 minutes, they're considered a guest, and now you're over occupancy. So, little things like that just to be careful with.
Yeah, totally makes sense. How can people reach out to you if they want to chat with you?
Yeah, well, I'm on the Savvy website, or it's www.savvy.realty/Lance Wolf, and you can see my properties and about me, or book a call with me to talk about this area.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Lance. Good chatting with you. I've got to run and catch a flight, but it was good catching up with y'all. And if you're watching this video later, put any questions or comments in the comment section. Lance and I will come back to this video a little bit later. We'll check if you guys do have any questions about the Space Coast or the Treasure Coast. I'm happy to get in there and answer it for you, or anything short-term rental investing all over the nation. We're here for you. Thanks for coming to hang out with me today, Lance. Thanks for
Sure.
everybody that tuned in too.
Yes, thank you.
All right, y'all. Bye now.